Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CinemaPsych podcast, the podcast where psychology meets film. I am your host, Dr. Alex Swan, and in this episode, we are going to be doing a little bit of a special episode. So recently, about 3 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to host a roundtable at the Midwestern Psychological Association's annual conference. Now, we held it virtually this year because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So if you're listening to this in the past, well, hopefully the pandemic is all gone. One can hope. But in any case, we held this. We didn't hold the conference in 2020. And so I was going to do the roundtable in person there, but I didn't get a chance to do it. So I resubmitted my proposal for this roundtable, and it was accepted, and I was able to, have fun with several of my colleagues talking about films, and we did it on Zoom. So this is a special episode of film pedagogy. Now, there's several films that are mentioned by me and by my colleagues, and you can. I will have their names and information in the show notes online, and you can just listen to the various ways. Some of them are going to be on the show very soon. And I'm looking forward to that because after our discussion, I was like, I need to have some of these people as guest hosts talking about films. So what you'll hear in this episode is, first and foremost, I want to apologize. Zoom sound effects are going to be heard throughout, people leaving my Zoom room or coming into my Zoom room. I forgot to turn off sound effects before I started recording. So unfortunately, you will be hearing the comings and goings of people while some of the roundtable guests are speaking. So I'll get that out of the way. My apologies on that one. That is a noob error right there. But other things you'll hear is, so this was like a 20-minute roundtable. We ended up going beyond that. Not all of it was recorded, but you'll definitely hear very quick questions on my part, quick responses to answers on my part, and quick responses from those who attended the roundtable. But they did a fantastic job by recognizing that they were going to be on a podcast. And so every time they speak, they mention who they are again. So I think it's extremely easy for listeners to follow the context of the conversation and follow who is speaking at various points. And It's gonna be a shorter episode than normal, and it's not gonna be like some of the other. There's gonna be no major film discussed in this particular episode, so just be aware of that. And so, without further ado, I'm gonna toss it to myself to get started with the special episode of the MPA 2021 Roundtable CinemaPsych Edition. Well, hi, everybody. We've got some newcomers in here. Welcome to the CinemaPsych podcast roundtable discussion here at MPA 2021. As I mentioned, I kind of want this just to be a fun conversation, sort of an exponential increase in the kind of program that I create for the podcast, which is specifically talking with one person about a specific movie. But in those episodes, I tend to have a chat about film pedagogy at the beginning of the episode. If you've ever caught an episode, I know that Jordan has been on the show before, so she knows the deal on that. And so I just have a few questions that we have in the 20-ish minutes for this particular roundtable, and feel free to just jump in. Like I said, it is recording. Okay, good. So my first question to you all is, because this is a podcast about using films in teaching. What are some of the reasons that you choose to use films and movies in your teaching and in your pedagogy? Floor is open.
Hey, this is Sarah Bagley. Um, I would say one of the reasons that I used film is to capture a broader perspective than I can provide in the classroom and to connect stories in ways that the students might have that ability to connect with that maybe my interactions won't provide for them.
Yeah, I think that's really crucial. It broadens our perspectives.
This is Crystal. I don't use film all that much in my classes, but I have used it in community psychology. Um, so I teach that it's an undergraduate course, and part of that class is talking about like activism and talking about living by your own values and figuring out what those values are and how you want to live by them. And so in the past, I've used films like actually a German language film, Sophie Scholl, The Final Days. So it's about the White Rose movement,
Oh, wow.
which was a movement in Germany of college students that were fighting against Hitler, and it was illegal to distribute what they considered anti-Nazi propaganda. And so she gets caught and she's interrogated, and you can see through uh, it's just like the whole like her last days. She ends up dying at the end. It's not a surprise or a spoiler or anything like that. But and just kind of showing like people putting literally their lives on the line. And I think it brings an emotionality and a connection to it that just reading about it in a book would not.
Yeah, I mean, I did you cut off there or
No, I
would
was just done.
okay? Yeah, right. Because a book would require your own imagination, but now you have the imagination of some filmmaker who has an idea here. And yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Any other comments about some of the reasons why you would choose to use films in your pedagogy?
This is Thomas here.
Hi, Thomas.
I typically use them for two reasons. One is I find that they're a good teaching tool for recognizing phenomena. So they provide kind of a nice tight narrative and different scenes. So like with social psychology, it's nice to put the situation onto the screen and let students kind of recognize different phenomena, different concepts, and choose the movie or curate the movies that are really good at demonstrating those things. And then I also teach a class called Psychology of Disability. And so it is very helpful for comparing positive representations with negative representations or stigmatizing representations. And so I also think in terms of social justice and diversity representations, movies can be really beneficial for pulling out the symbolic, harms that can be done in portraying different marginalized groups in positive versus negative ways.
That's really awesome, Thomas. This is a later question, but I thought I'd ask you since you just mentioned it, the comparison in disability psych. What are some movies that you use to compare positive and negative representations of disability?
It's funny because most movies don't kind of live up to, so I have to like find the narrow few that are pretty beneficial. So I will have them watch actually the 1930s movie Freaks, which is so surprisingly, a lot of people might say, oh, this is objectifying and that sort of thing, but it's actually one of the more progressive movies in the sense that it employed a bunch of people actually with disabilities to portray themselves, and it also shows kind of I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it creates this portrayal of empowerment, even and solidarity within this group, that they actually get revenge on the non-disabled person who is an imposter into the group. But I also use like Murder Ball is a great one. I use Children of a Lesser God because that portrays some challenging portrayals of stereotypes. And then I will also use themes from like X-Men.
Yes.
As a kind of agitating social change and that sort of thing. So, and then Born on the 4th of July, I think, is another one that is shows activism. And so, yeah, there's plenty. There's some out there that are really. I look for the social group portrayed in the film and not as an individual story of tragedy.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for sharing those examples. Well, I have another question about examples toward the end of the discussion. Thank you for those insightful comments. My next question is about, pedagogy in general with respect to assessments. So we want to use these fun, especially if they're comedy movies, we want to use these fun forms of art to allow us to expand horizons, but we have to assess their usefulness, right? And we have to assess, obviously, thinking. So to start off this question, what kinds of assessments do you use specifically with film? I'll go ahead and explain what I've been doing recently, which is I assign a short paper when I assign a movie. I assign a short paper and 2 to 3 pages, and they have to choose, if they're watching the full-length film, they have to choose 3 scenes that express or portray various material or concepts from the class that we are talking about. And so they have free reign to write what they want, choose whatever 3 scenes that stick out to them as representative of the material, and then sort of write about that. They have to bring in primary sources to support their arguments. What kind of, so to that, in that vein, what kind of assessments do you all use?
Hi, this is Bonnie.
Hi, Bonnie.
So I teach abnormal psychology asynchronously, and I created a group project where each individual in the group has to choose a depiction of one of the personality disorders that we're studying. So if they choose borderline personality disorder, they each choose a clip, and then they have to get together and assess which clip seems to depict more criteria for borderline personality disorder. And then they have to kind of give justification for why they chose a particular movie clip that better shows the personality disorder. So I get a lot of good feedback from students. It intimidates them initially, and then once they kind of get into it and draw together as a group, it becomes kind of a fun project for them.
That's awesome. I like the aspect of where you choose something and then you determine which clip, sort of in the reverse of what I had described. Other assessments from the group regarding film projects, papers. To anybody test on material in their classes?
This is Sarah. I don't do tests, but I also assign papers depending on the level, intro psych, behavioral neuro, the section of the course concepts we're covering. Usually I do it by paper form, but often I will do discussion-based activities where they have to apply things like what ethical scenarios, or how would this exist in today's culture, or like we just bring up various discussion questions. I also teach a whole class called Memory in the Media, and we,
Nice.
as a class, watch these different movies at certain points, and then I stop halfway through the movie, and they always have discussion groups to say, and one of the questions is, how do you think the rest of the movie will play out? So,
I
getting
like that
them the
one.
social aspect, communicating with each other, building on those skills. And then I guess in that class, I do have some questions integrating concepts from the movie, but not typically tests.
Sarah, I'm going to have to follow up with you on that. I like the discussion one because especially guess how it ends. That I love that. I love that. So I will if you want to send me a private message, your email, so I can get to you. Thank you.
Another one is connecting, because we watch multiple movies in that course, such as you guys have probably seen Inside Out,
Mm-hmm.
and the main character's named Riley, but we also watch something like Still Alice.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about Still Alice's mind, how would Inside Out's Riley's emotions look in Alice's mind? So like connecting the class or the movies in those ways.
That is really awesome. I love that. Oh, see, this is why I wanted to do this roundtable. That's amazing. Okay. Any other comments about assessments? Yeah, Thomas.
Just one additional thing. I love Sarah, what you were saying. And I definitely will think about that for future. But I was just thinking about one thing in particular that hasn't been said that I do. And I do this with several of the movies, but especially I like to do it with the movie Do the Right Thing in multicultural psychology, where I talk about the concepts, or I get them to recognize the concepts that are being portrayed, but then I also take a step back and ask them to think about how this film will impact audiences. So as a stimulus. So thinking about films as a stimulus or films that are stimuli for audiences that go to the movie theater or watch these, and how does that portrayal instantiate some form of lay perspective about what racism is or what prejudice is and what we should do about it. Because, you can contrast Do the Right Thing with something like Crash. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it gives you a different message about what the answers are or what we should do as a society. So I want them to see the stimulus in the film, and I assess that.
Yeah, I like the comparison there between Do the Right Thing and Crash. It's a very good comparison. Hey, listener. Thanks for sticking around this episode. I hope you're enjoying it. Anyway, I need your help in growing this podcast's audience. In past episodes, I've asked you to share this podcast with 5 of your friends. Let's keep doing that. Share this podcast on social media, especially if you really liked an episode. Share that episode. Tell 5 of your friends or family if they have an interest in film or psychology, or even better, both. Growing the audience is our goal for the second year of programming, and so we need your help to get that done. Other ways to contribute to the podcast include tips to our PayPal, found on our website, becoming a patron at patreon.com/CinemaPsychPod, rocking some sweet merch from our Spreadshirt shop, and or leaving us a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. Now back to the show. So with the time left that we have on this round table, I wanted to, sorry that we're like moving super quick. I just have a lot of questions. I always have a lot of questions. One thing that I asked our STP colleagues, and I want to get your feedback. I don't know if any of you did the survey that I sent out at the end of last year. But one thing that I am curious about, and maybe we can end on this, and if you have any suggestions for films, you can drop those in the chat, because we probably won't have the time to get to that. But I guess my final question here would be sort of a 2-pronged question. What are the challenges that you've faced using films, either from the student
the students or administration sort of overstepping maybe, and what kind of feedback have you gotten from your students about the use of film in your classes?
I would say one of the biggest drawbacks right now is trying to hold the in-person experience in this very weird hybrid virtual world. And especially because I like to have discussions midway through the film. You can't have everybody just go and watch it for an hour, come back. It feels very disjointed rather than having that community experience. So that's my biggest struggle right now.
Yeah, that is a big struggle too. I did a free trial for a film that I needed them to watch. I did a free trial for a streaming service, and I said, here's the login, go watch it. Watch anything else you want to. Other challenges, other comments that you received from students, positive or negative?
Yeah, so I'm having a quiet moment here, so I'm going to try to jump in. But
nice.
We've talked about this before, and I don't currently use a lot of films in my classes, but I've thought about it a lot. And right now, I think especially our time is so limited, I'm not using it. But we do have we have a class that somebody else teaches, and I don't know them. And students complain about the class a lot. And I've been kind of thinking about it because it's a graduate level class. It's a graduate level class, and I'll hear from my students that, they'll watch a movie together on Zoom, and they feel like it's kind of, and then they discuss it. And it seems to me, so whenever I talk to students about it, I'm like, well, it's not always obvious to students what the plan is that the faculty member has. And so give the benefit of the doubt, trust the process a little. They're counseling students, so it's really easy to just trust. Let's just say trust the process, and they understand what that means. And but I think if there is one, it just sounds like there just needs to be more intentionality around the instructor being explicit about what they want the student to get from that experience, and doing what Sarah is talking about, that stop it, talk about it a little bit. It seems like when I have done things in the past like that, students seem to have a little bit more buy-in of oh, okay, this is why that's important, and this is why this is an important experience, and why the instructor is doing that. And yes, in an ideal world, students give faculty the benefit of the doubt, that you're not just wheeling out the TV on the cart. Right. But anyway, if you understand what I mean when I say that.
Substitute teacher day.
Yes.
That's what I kind of think of. Substitute teacher day. I don't
yeah,
have anything
exactly.
else planned. Let's pop in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it, obviously college.
That's all right, Jordan. Totally understand. I may have had a chattering girl here today had she not gone to school. So I totally, I get the face. I get the face.
I think intentionality and sort of showing your cards is pretty important.
Yeah.
I would say another thing is the possibility of triggers in the movies, because a lot of these movies do deal with very intense concepts, and I have to be very upfront and even include we will be watching R-rated movies in my syllabus, and I tell them exactly what movies, and if they're not comfortable with that, they should not be in that class. And then I even got it so far as a student was still having an issue, and I had to substitute in a different movie. So on the fly, I had to change everything, change all of my discussions. So I think that is also something that is just a struggle.
Right. And I have dealt with similar things too. I actually, when it is a film that has strong themes, it's rated R, and we need to give content warnings for that, I will typically link to the Common Sense Media page on that film, because Common Sense Media is, I think, is a family-based organization, but they have great full descriptions of all of the gnarly stuff that might be in those movies. And so regardless of the organization itself, their pages on these films are wonderful. So I definitely offer that to my students. And I've had to do that in the past for a film like Black Swan or something.
I'm wondering if I can chime in a little bit.
Go for it, Alan.
Yeah. So I'm Alan. I'm a recent graduate from Compton College. So I came from like a more student perspective.
Awesome.
And I'm majoring in psychology. My focus was more in cognitive, only illustrative truth. That was the thing focused. But I'm actually going to like grad school for film. so that's kind of like where my side is coming in. Sorry for that long-winded introduction. Yeah. But the one thing I guess I was really, really wondering is, and a lot of those points were touched on by you guys, is first, like film are being made by filmmakers. They're made by, they have somebody making it, and there are intentions by them, which sometimes are not accurate, and which was mentioned by Jordan about like what are some embellishments or inaccuracies in film. And I was curious, like, and you guys have discussed about this, like what are some ways, like including the instructor's intentionality to help guide the students on, I don't know, on like specific parts of the film, or like because filmmakers are not psychologists. They're not perfect in depicting those scenarios. So that was one thing that I guess I was wondering, is like and it was, I kind of, you guys kind of answered it I guess already. But the other question I guess is the one thing I really felt was that because like we grow up from all the students and professors, of course, grow up from very different backgrounds, and the movies we watch are very different. And one thing I guess it kind of leads into the question of diversity a little bit, I guess, as well. But also this is, I think the examples being brought up in this conversation has been great. There has been Spike Lee movie, and there's foreign films like Sophie's Show, The Final Days. There are foreign films. But I guess I wonder is like before I went to Carleton, like a lot of films I think that occupied my minds are Hollywood productions, are Western commercial productions. But also, like, I guess the question is, what are ways to, I don't know, invite different perspectives and different spaces into courses, even though maybe not just multicultural psychology courses, or I don't know, there still can be other ways, I don't know, to invite different, I don't know, movies into each other's spaces, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question, Alan, and I appreciate the perspective. I try to grab as much diverse film as possible in my teaching. So recently I used Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon to discuss fallibility of memory, right? And you have is 1950s Japan when the film was being made, but then it's also set in feudal Japan. And so you have all of these elements of mysticism. The film is in Japan, so it's reading for non-Japanese audiences, and it's in black and white. So there's a lot of buy-in for this one, and my students actually enjoyed it. They enjoyed going back 70 years to explore what is so named the Rashomon effect. And so I encourage others to join in for that answer as well.
So one of the things that I think is important is you really have to scaffold those viewing experiences for students. I found they do not willingly do that, like make that selection if you give them a choice between movies. I found that they're really averse to subtitles and black and white. And then also, like, I'm really intrigued because there's a lot of this where you're like recognizing psychology in film, but there's also the psychology of the film. And I would kind of argue that filmmakers are psychologists. They're just trying to get people to be attracted to the movie rather than the actual facts in the movie. And so talking students through the language of film and what the filmmaker is trying to do here and in that sense, like, I think that makes it a really rich experience, and do have some movies that are a little bit slower paced, which anything outside of Western commercial is like slower paced. But you have to, like, I think you also have to break it up. And I find that for me, if I'm watching one of those, I have to watch it about like a half an hour at a time, because even my brain is like processing this at such a rich level of information and emotion that I can't watch a 90-minute like Kurosawa film or Buñuel or Bresson. Like some of those are just like overpowering to me, and I have to like, okay, we need to stop here, and we'll just watch it at like half an hour or 20-minute clips at a time, and then talk about it. So I think scaffolding is a really big part to that.
And I think also, this is Crystal again, throwing in some of that perspective taking, those skills, and getting students to really put themselves in, Germany is not that culturally different from the US. There are some differences, but they're not that drastic. But the culture of the 1940s versus now, students obviously feel very differently. Then they're more likely to put themselves, at least explicitly, in Sophie's position than in the people who are interrogating her. And so like getting them to think about like, what would it be like to live in a culture like this? How do you see similarities between what happened in the 40s and what is going on right now? And how do you take steps in your own life to fight against injustice, to fight against discrimination, to fight against all of those things, and really getting them to like think about like, what roles are people playing, not just in the movie, but like in real life, like what positions are they filling up, whose rules are they following, and how do we empathize with different people within the group. I think that was really helpful for my students as well.
Well, I want to thank everybody. We went a little long. I want to thank everybody for coming by and chatting about films in this really quick roundtable. I was super stoked to do this, and it lived up to the hype. So I in my own mind. So I appreciate everybody coming by. I think there are other sessions that people want to jump to. Interesting to recognize the implied biases of the scriptwriter. Yeah, so that's one of the things that I do love about being able to use film in class, because it is coming from the perspective, and this goes back to Alan's question, it is coming from the perspective of, just a small group of people, and really the director's vision is what ends up on the screen. And so you kind of have to weigh that when talking about what you're actually watching. So yeah, Nam, I definitely agree with that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the roundtable. Enjoy the rest of MPA, everybody. Thank you for coming by and chatting. It was absolutely wonderful. Your comments are great. Expect this episode to come by in May. And yeah, it was lovely. Have a good day, everybody.